I'm watching you. How do you feel about that? I guess in some situations we're okay with it, but in others it feels a bit weird, doesn't it? Being watched. Well, the truth of the matter is we're watched all the time. Walking down the street, on public transport, when we're in the office or at school, we're permanently being watched. And of course, as parents, our children watch us more than we know. Every one of our reactions and our behaviours and responses just acts like a blueprint for them to live by. Okay, well, if it meant you could get better at your job, would you be okay with me watching you work? In the world of aviation, pilots undergo an annual observation called a recurrent, up to 24 hours of observation each year. And for pilots like my cousin Nick, it's a fantastic way to learn. Now, many years ago, when he'd first qualified as an Air Force instructor, Nick strolled into the simulator rig one morning to find two of the RAF's most experienced Hercules C-130 pilots, and they were sat there waiting for their recurrent. Now, these two guys had flown more than 20,000 hours together. You name it, they'd done it. Special combat operations, humanitarian missions. They'd flown the world side by side in the cockpit of this iconic military transport aircraft. And after working so long together, they'd sort of fallen into their own special way of doing things. Along comes the fresh-faced rookie. And he observes them flying the plane in ways which really aren't in line and in keeping with the protocols and best practice. He's got to say something fairly and professionally. Well, on the first day, he got told to shove his observations, I think you can imagine where. On the second day, he got told to shove his observations in the same place you just thought of. Day 3 rolls round, and once again the pilots are flying in the sim. But this time, through sheer irony, they fell foul of their special way of doing things, which resulted in them crashing the plane. Immediately, one of those highly decorated pilots stands up and storms straight out of the simulator. And after what seemed like an age of silence, the remaining co-pilot reaches the all-important confession point. Okay, he says. Let's talk about what I need to do so that this never happens again. You see, by crashing their plane in the sim, these pilots had experienced the emotional awkwardness needed for their learning to stick. Some things can only be achieved by observation and realization, not on a course some 3 months from now. So, observation, it turns out, is a fantastic way for humans to learn. And I think that's down to two special components. First of all, it's immediate. Now, when you read a book or go on a course, you know something here, but then there might be a period of time until you actually get to use it. So there's a big learning gap there. Not so with observation. A small learning gap. I know and I do, all wrapped up in the moment. And of course, knowledge is like fresh food. If you don't use it, it goes off. So that's the first special component of observation. Now, the second special component of observation is emotion. And it turns out that emotion is a really cool way of locking in our knowledge. The night I proposed to my girlfriend, I can still see the way the moonlight cast a silvery shimmering path across the Mediterranean to the horizon. And I can feel the warmth of the Cypriot breeze as I begin my well-rehearsed but slightly nervous spiel. Once you finish that glass of champagne, I said, I'm going to ask you to marry me. Now, always one for a challenge, she downed the champagne. Go on then, she dared me. I took one knee. Would you do me the honour? You know how things go here, folks. Well, that was over 20 years ago, still really vivid to me. Emotions are stored deep in our limbic brain, and they act really well as a cement to lock in our recall and make it happen instantly. So here's a test. Because all emotions work, rage, insult, pain, discomfort, joy, sorrow, surprise, and yes, love. Let's try this out then. If you're up for it, can you, as quickly as possible, tell me the name of your first ever crush? It's right there, isn't it? It's on the tip of your tongue. So observation works really well with these two special components. It's immediate and it's emotional. We see this around us all the time, actually, thinking about it right now, because observation is at the heart of the coach-athlete relationship. I mean, you wouldn't expect to go see Serena Williams play any Grand Slam tennis match without noticing her coach Patrick Mouratoglou up in the VIP box. It wouldn't happen. And what about one of the world's most successful teams? Let's take the half-time routine of the New Zealand All Blacks. So, the players start to come into the dressing room and they'll chat amongst themselves and grab a quick drink. But quite quickly, they'll move into two groups, the backs and the forwards. And the coaches work with those two groups, but they'll ask them coaching questions like, how are you seeing this? What are you experiencing here? How is this going for you? And then towards the end of the half-time routine, the whole team will gather back together with the head coach, who'll show them a video clip and give them a short observational message. No inspirational speeches, very few blow-ups, just observation, reflection, and action. And then the number of times the All Blacks accelerate through the opposition in the second half. And if we look at education, Professor Matt O'Leary is leading the movement for teacher-on-teacher observations to improve the quality of education. Now, Matt's one of the co-directors of CSpace, an educational research facility in Birmingham, and what he's realised is when observation is used as a weapon to judge teachers, to grade them, to criticise them, perhaps in line with how Ofsted inspections used to work, then guess what? There's very little improvement in teacher quality. So what Matt and his team are doing here is trying to take those barriers down and help teachers get over that awkwardness, refine their coaching skills, and what he's seeing is record levels of teacher engagement through the use of observation, which has led one of his participants in his research, an early years lecturer from a big English university, to say this: observation is like oxygen. And when I'm given the oxygen to breathe, it's breathing new life into my thinking and my teaching. So here's a question. If observation is such a powerful way for humans to learn, how comes leaders aren't champing at the bit to be watched? Now, for the past 2 decades, I've been a leader and a leadership coach. And I can tell you, there's some resistance out there to observation. Now, when I say observation, what I don't mean is the superficial platitudes you get from things like 360 feedback. What I'm talking about is developmental, regular coaching throughout the day beside leaders while they work. Trusted development conversations with the sole intent of helping leaders to get better, faster. Ask yourself that question. Why might leaders resist being observed? Well, experience tells me that the pain of it is worse than the benefit. And actually reflecting back on organisations I know, and you probably know as well, that's understandable, isn't it? Because culture's so often like a power game. And the players have to be very adept at politics and at perception and at positioning. And there's a game here to be played, and there are winners and there are losers with weaknesses to be exploited and leveraged for gain. It's this sort of behaviour that Mara and Stephen Klemick, founders of the Heartstars philosophy, would call below-the-line self-promoting. It's that egotistical control and competition and striving, undermining other people to make myself look good. Now, if that's the culture, why would any leader willingly expose themselves to the vulnerability of being observed, especially if it meant I had to admit that I might have some blind spots to work on or some personal weaknesses to improve upon? I get it. There are personal and cultural obstacles in the way to observation. But get over them we must. We owe it to our employees to be better leaders faster. And you know what? We owe it to ourselves to ask ourselves the innovation question. How can we do this better? We don't have time on this. This is a burning platform for me, and I'll tell you why. It's because 2/3 of leaders who return from leadership development programs actually admit nothing changes. So now is the time to step up. Now is the time to take leadership development to where it's needed most. In a time-poor world in which we live, we have to take leadership development where it's needed on the front line every single day. And if we can do that, if we can harness that transformational power that observation could bring, then the prize is huge. One of the organizations that exemplify this real and rapid learning is an organization called NextJump. Now, they're a $2 billion e-commerce platform based in New York City. And the CEOs there, Charlie and Megan, have created a world-class learning culture. Fundamentally, through everybody being aware of and knowing their development opportunities. They call them their backhands. And what they've created here at NextJump is actually a vehicle for people development and revenue, not just revenue. And in a sector that's suffering with labour turnover in excess of 40%, the churn of staff, the labour turnover at NextJump, practically zero. NextJumpers love their organisation, and it's an organisation where time spent developing people is the business. It's not an add-on like it is in so many other organisations. It's everyone's responsibility. Now, Charlie and Megan have introduced so many great initiatives to bring them to the world's attention in this way. And just one of them I'm going to share with you. It's called Talking Partners. Now, can you imagine having someone beside you as you navigate the adversities, the challenges that personal development in this way brings? A confidant, a sounding board for your ideas, someone, a shoulder to cry on if you're having a bad day, a friend. These are the people who don't just give you the feedback you want to hear, they give you the feedback you need to hear. Real, immediate. And you do the same for them. Why? Because that's what makes it a great place to learn and to live and to work and to grow. And there's no practice field, there's no simulator at NextJump. All the learning is live in the business. You have their back, they have yours. But it's got to be in the stretch zone. You're stretching each other. You're helping each other to feel uncomfortably supported. So we've seen that observation is helping pilots to fly planes better. It's helping teachers to educate smarter. It's helping elite athletes to win. And it's helping world-class organisations like NextJump create an environment where every employee feels engaged and valued. And if it's going to work for you, there are 3 key common principles that run through all of those examples. 1, it has to be based on trust and togetherness. Being isolated and lonely in this process is a very scary place to be. 2, it has to involve honest and sometimes difficult personal realizations. And 3, the intent of this observation has to be purely for your personal growth, not to judge you, not to blame you, and certainly not to performance manage you. This is about you becoming your best as quickly as possible. Because if you believe, like I do, that our very future depends on better leadership, now is the time to step up in courage. Because hiding behind the numbers and the output and a busy diary and an ego to avoid the hard work of self-development, that's easy. But if you want to be inspirational, you want to build followers, you want to be wiser and feel more connected to people, and of course you want to bring people and resources together in a way that's never been done before to create something amazing, you've got to be open to observation. You've got to seek the discomfort to get the benefit. And you've got to ask someone you trust to watch you.